Hey guys, it's great to be with you this evening. Thank you so much for showing up and for being present. We really hope that this is going to be an informative night for you, and that you find out some things that can maybe help you, help yourself, help your children, help your teenagers, whatever the reason is that you signed up for. So do feel free to use the chat box as and when you need it, and to comment and to join in, and for this to be a space where you feel like you can be part of a community. So just a little bit about me before I dive into some of the content this evening. So I founded the Lily Jo Project 5 years ago. The Lily Jo Project, for those of you who don't know, is an online mental health resource designed in order to help the browser begin to help themselves. So on there's top tips, information, podcasts, blogs, all around the subject of mental health. So before I started the Lily Jo Project, I worked in the NHS for 5 years as a counsellor, working with adults who were struggling with their mental health, things like depression, anxiety, eating disorders, childhood trauma, grief, loss, all those things. I would work on a one-to-one with people in the counselling room, and I absolutely loved my job and still love what I do, but now I do work privately for myself as well as running the Lily Jo Project. So I also do music, performing artist, and I use my music to engage with children and young people. So for example, we go into primary schools, myself and my team, we go in, we talk about mental health, we share songs that are inspiring and encouraging, and try and connect young people to the message in a way that's relevant for them. So really enjoy that side of things and really love to connect with teachers and the young people themselves. So this evening, I get the privilege of being joined by Emma Jane Brown, and Emma is a child and adolescent psychotherapist. And I met Emma on set filming on a show called The Mum Show. Emma was a presenter on there, and I asked her if she would join us for this very first forum because I know she has so much wisdom on this subject. So Emma, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Thank you, Lily Jo, for just thank you for inviting me to come along tonight. This really, I think we'd all agree that this time in our world is a really challenging time, particularly for our children and young people, and the past couple of years has been, I think, particularly hard for them. So it's a real pleasure to be here with you guys tonight, and yeah, thank you for showing up. And just a little bit about me. So I trained as a child therapist initially, probably nearly about 18 years ago now, and I've worked in CAMS in the NHS ever since. And for those of you that don't know what CAMS stands for, it's Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service, and it's part of our NHS kind of core offer really for children and young people. Within that role, I've worked right from kind of infant mental health with babies and toddlers right the way through to older adolescents and teenagers. I would say that my passion really is about relationships, particularly the significance of the parent-child relationship and how important that relationship is on how people develop, how their personalities develop, and on their future development and mental health. And also, I guess through my work, I've done a huge amount of work with parents, and that kind of also triggered me to want to train to be an adult psychotherapist. So I kind of dual qualified in that respect. And alongside my NHS role, like Lily Jo, I also have a private practice where I see, either adults or young people or couples or families. And I work with a range of difficulties, but I'd say probably my kind of specialism, if there is such a thing in this field, is early childhood trauma and the impact that has on us throughout our lives, but particularly on our relationships. And I'd also, just to finish my introduction, I'd also say that I am a fellow traveller on this journey, being a parent of 2 teenage girls. I am in the thick of it, so I feel like I'm kind of fully alongside all of you on this journey as we think about our children and young people's mental health tonight. So yeah, great to be here.
Lovely. So unfortunately, this evening, we're not going to be able to give you all the answers to everything mental health, but we are excited to start a conversation and build a community. So please do join the Facebook group. You know, over the course of this evening, we are going to put links in the chat box. So you might want to copy and paste those links into a document on your laptop if you're watching by laptop, or into the notes section on your iPad or on your phone, just so that you don't miss anything. But as Shelby said before, we will be popping everything in an email as well later tomorrow, so you don't miss out. But yes, we can't cover every subject tonight, but like Emma said, the relationship between the parent or the caregiver and the child is so crucial to the child's mental health. And so we really did want to focus in on that tonight. So I believe personally that we have 3 types of health, that we have our physical health, that we have our spiritual health, and that we have our mental health. And I think it's just really important to set that scene as we start, because often often this happens, but I remember in particular one person coming up to me after a gig and saying, "Oh, miss, my mum has mental health." Now, what the student meant was that her mum struggles with her mental health, but actually we all have mental health. It's just that some of us have really good mental health, some of us are struggling with our mental health, and some of us are somewhere in the middle or in between all of that. So I believe we have 3 types of health, and that actually each area of our life needs to be looked at, and we need to look at it as a holistic thing. So it's estimated that 1 in 4 adults struggle with their mental health at some point in their adult life. And I know that was definitely the case for me. That's what sparked my journey, actually, was my mental health struggles back in 2003. That's what kicked me off on this journey. So we all, not all, but mostly have something that can trigger our mental health issues, or our mental health issue within us at some point in our adult life. And at the moment, the stats for children are quite alarming. It used to be, when I first started this journey, 1 in 10 children struggling. Now it's 1 in 6 children, which is actually really quite alarming, isn't it? And the other stat we've got here for you tonight as well. Read it out loud for me, Shelby.
Yeah, okay. So the first stat is 1 in 6 children aged 5 to 16 were identified as having a probable mental health problem as of July 2020. And then the second stat is nearly half of 17 to 19-year-olds with a diagnosable mental health disorder has self-harm or attempted suicide at some point.
Yeah, so alarming stats, and stats that we want to really try to change. And I'm sure that the people who have joined us this evening are passionate about that, just like I am and just like Emma is. So here at the Lily Jo Project, we are about trying to keep things as simple as possible. And so our top tips this evening uses the word child as an acronym, so it's very easy for you to go away with and to remember. So we've got our C standing for cultivate self-care. H, help and support from others. I, initiate connection. L, listen empathically. And D, dig for treasure. So I don't know about you, but as a parent myself, I know full well that when I'm good and I'm doing okay, my children are better, they're better behaved, and they do okay. But actually, when I'm having a hard day, when I'm struggling, I also notice that my children might start to play up, that they struggle too, or they might be fighting with each other and all those kinds of things. So I really do believe that the relationship between the child and the caregiver is crucial. And so it's really important that actually, in looking after our children's well-being and our classroom's well-being, we actually cultivate self-care first and foremost for ourselves. So that's where we wanted to begin this evening, really. In a world where we are always on, and where we are working longer days, longer hours, the boundaries between home and work have got very blurry with the use of devices, it is important that we take a breather and that we make sure that we are looking after ourselves the very best we can. So I haven't traveled by plane for a while. I'm not sure about you, but I remember traveling by plane and enjoying it a lot. And when the cabin crew would do the safety demonstration, they would say, if the oxygen drops from the cabin, make sure, parents, that you put the oxygen mask on yourself first before helping your child. And I used to find that really hard as a parent, to think, well, surely I'd want to save my child and put the oxygen mask on them first. And actually, I think as parents, we do want to do that. We want to always make sure that our children are okay first. And that's absolutely innate within us. But actually, if we fit our own oxygen mask first, then we can breathe in order to extend that help and support for our children. So I think this is something I'm still learning, but it is so key to look after ourselves first and foremost. So I have 8 self-care points to share really quickly with you. And I have a whole workshop on this, which I can email over to you tomorrow if you want to take part. But this is my self-care acronym, a very quick whistle-stop tour. Okay. So we've got the S for sleep. E is exercise. L is listening into yourself. F is practicing forgiveness. C is being creative. A is affirmations. R, relaxation. And E, eating well. So they're my kind of quick whistle stop points. And actually, if we can try and do 1 or 2 of these a day, or if we can try and at least prioritize our sleep, prioritize our eating patterns, making sure that we are trying to fit that exercise within our day and our schedules, then that can be really key for looking after ourselves. So there is a whole workshop on this, but we'll just quickly go through these points. So sleep. So it's really important that we have between 7 and 12 hours of sleep. Now, I know that's really hard if you've got a new baby, or if you're, going through a difficult time, struggling with insomnia or things like that. But actually, it's really important that we try at least to prioritize our sleep where possible. Exercise, good. So the NHS recommends that we try and do 20 minutes of exercise each day. I think I struggle with that, but I try to do at least 3 times a week, some kind of exercise, some kind of way to keep myself moving. And even if I know I can't get out, I'll try and at least run up the stairs rather than walk, or power walk the school run rather than take my time, and try and make exercise or getting my heart rate up a priority. L, listen to your body. So sometimes I was working with a client recently and we talked about listening into our body. And even sometimes, if you're like me, you might even need to go to the bathroom and hold it, not even listen into your body to go and actually use the bathroom. So we talked about how actually we could marry 2 things together, whereby you listen into your body, you know you need to use the bathroom, you go to the bathroom, and then on the bathroom toilet, sorry, we're getting very graphic here, you do a minute or 2 of relaxation and breathing. So that's marrying 2 things together. So whether you've got some kind of watch or Fitbit that you can just click on and do 2 minutes of breathing, just to make sure that you are listening in and figuring out what it is that you need for that moment. Do I need a cup of tea? Do I need some water? Have I got a headache? Do I need to just take a quick walk around the block? What is it that you need? So checking into with yourself is really important. F stands for forgiveness. Again, really important, especially as parents and caregivers, that we forgive ourselves as well when we mess up, when we do things that we shouldn't do, maybe like losing our temper, shouting, that kind of thing. Forgiving yourself in this context can be really important, and making sure that we also hold things lightly and forgive others where possible. Now, something that I love to use in my therapy sessions with people is creating and writing anger letters. So that's where you kind of write down all the things that you're really angry about, or direct the anger at a person, and then do something with that letter. So never send it to the person. But I got this lovely image from a client just the other week, actually, which is of her. She'd written her anger letter and then she'd taken a walk. And this was her taking a photo of her anger letter burning. And I just thought, wow, that's so powerful and significant to make a ritual out of that. So really quickly going on to create, really important as humans that we create things, whether that's baking a cake, whether that's doing a little bit of art, whether that is writing a card to someone, and just anything to be creative is really important when it comes to looking after our self-care. So this study I found really interesting. So researchers gave a group of 40 people art supplies and then told them to go away and get creative. After 45 minutes, scientists discovered that no matter the level of artistic capability, 75% of people experienced a decrease in the hormone cortisol, which is the hormone we produce when we're stressed. So it works. To go away, to be creative is really important. A stands for affirmations. So that's maybe just encouraging yourself. If you feel like you're doing not so well, or if you feel like you're having a bit of a hard time, post-it notes with just some encouraging words can be really important. I know when I've been through my hardest times and I've remembered to do this, it's really helped me to see post-it notes saying things like keep going, or you're doing great, or well done, just to remind yourself of who you are and what you bring to the world. So maybe even 3 things that you're grateful for each day, and writing those down in a journal at the end of every day can be really key as well, just to build your confidence and to provide you with that caring, nurturing environment for yourself. R stands for relaxation. I love 4, 5, 6 breathing, in for 4, hold for 5 and out for 6. Won't do that now because we are whistle stop touring, but again, something that you can maybe have a go at if you watch the workshop in full tomorrow. And E, eating right. So there's a whole list of foods that we can eat to combat anxiety and to combat low mood. And it's about doing some research. It's about figuring out what works for your body and how can you make sure that you're eating right for you and that you are getting as much nutritional fuel into your system so that you can be the best parent or caregiver that you can be. So my book recommendation on this first point of tonight, Cultivate Self-Care, is Self-Compassion by Kristin Neff. So you can get that from Amazon, but that book for me has been really significant and really useful. Over to you, Emma.
Yeah, thanks, Lily Jo. So the next part of the acronym of CHILD is H, and that is for help and support from others. And some of this might feel kind of quite obvious, but I think it's such a significant, important reminder that we all really need to hear these messages tonight. I certainly am kind of, I hear a lot about self-care. I give a lot of self-care advice, but even just hearing it again tonight is really helpful. So we've just heard from Lily Jo that self-care is vital, and particularly vital if we are to be available and present to support our children and young people, particularly if they are really struggling. A key aspect of I think self-compassion and self-care is about connection, and having deep, meaningful, authentic connections with other people, and also feeling supported with others as well. I think when our child or young person is particularly struggling with their mental health, as parents, certainly, I think it has a massive impact on us. I think it can create a huge amount of anxiety for us. I think we can, potentially feel like we're to blame in some way, or, that kind of the feeling of guilt that if your child isn't okay, we're not okay. So it is really, really important that when our children or young people are struggling, that we do have a bit of a team around us. And so the question I'd ask you guys tonight is to just think about who is in your team. That might be your partner, it might be grandparents of the child. I suppose it's thinking about who are the important people in your child's life as well. Who can you kind of call on or draw from for support? And again, it could be grandparents, it could be youth leaders, it could be teachers, or it could be your friends, or family friends. And I think that there's two main reasons why this is really important. One is to have a consistent approach. So if your child is really struggling, if you can kind of almost gather your team up and say, look, this is what's going on, this is the way that I want to try and deal with this, or this is the way that I want to try and respond, and have everybody, have all the adults kind of really being on the same team, really, and really giving that consistent response to this child or young person is really, really important, because then the child is feeling understood and has that in all areas of their life, whether they're at home or with friends or at school. And the other reason why it's important is about sharing the sense of responsibility. It's a huge responsibility just to be a parent. And so when our young person or child is really struggling, like I said earlier about, thinking about that sense of guilt or shame attached, I think particularly it can feel like a huge responsibility. And for those of us who are perhaps single parents, or parents that are working full time, or just kind of juggling things, it's really important that we feel like we've got people that we can draw on for that kind of support, and that we're not doing this all on our own. The other point to think about in terms of support is when to reach out beyond our circle, beyond our kind of immediate team of people, when to maybe seek more professional support. And that would be, things like when do you decide to go to your GP? When do you seek kind of, going down that road of does the young person or child actually need some professional therapy or counselling at this time? And actually being okay with asking those questions and seeking that support. So it could be a GP, it could be school nurse, it could, in terms of thinking about school, obviously school is the other, for most of our children and young people, school is the other, environment that has a huge, it fills all of their time. And so it's really important that I think the communication between home and school is really solid. And if you've got concerns as parents, I think it's really important to share that with school, and so that school can keep an eye out. And there's usually a pastoral lead within a school that you can speak to. Certainly secondary schools, primary schools, kind of go to the school teacher or deputy or head teacher. And I just think it's they're equipped to deal with these difficulties. So don't kind of hold that anxiety on your own. I think it's really important to share the worries and communicate with school. And also, talk to other people about what you're going through. I think it's, in order to break down some of the stigma that we feel that is around about mental health, I think it's important, obviously, to choose carefully who you speak to, but do speak to somebody. Do allow yourself to be vulnerable, talk about what your worries are for your child and young person, because I'm pretty sure that other parents and other people will be having similar worries. And I think, that idea of feeling like you're not alone in this, and that this isn't just your child that's struggling, is really, really important. I think it's sometimes as parents, we get involved with the comparison trap, don't we, of like comparing and feeling like, oh, are we doing a good enough job as a parent, and comparing ourselves to other parents who, particularly in terms of the social media stuff, it can be very misleading. You can see parents that have seemed to be, juggling it all and still going to yoga 5 times a week and, and looking amazing every day as well. And that just isn't real, and it's not realistic. So get real with the people that you trust, get real and vulnerable, and start talking about this topic of how we can help support our children and young people. So yeah, I think that's kind of what I would be saying really about that support. Find your team, reach out to professionals when it's needed, and just, start breaking down the stigma of talking about mental health, and talk to people and be vulnerable.
Amazing. Thank you, Emma. And I know that whole thing of like trying to do it all perfectly and trying to make sure that you are the best parent you can be. We all want to be the best parent we can be, but actually finding our tribe is super, super key and important. So thank you so much for that. So our next part of the acronym is the I in child, which stands for initiate connection. So we're going to talk a little bit here about the 5 love languages, and some of you may be aware of the 5 love languages. It's something that I've really lived by and really have found to be real and useful in my own personal life. And also when sharing the 5 love languages with clients who maybe have never heard it before and then go away and have a try and gone, wow, that's really powerful. I just thought I had to include it really in this evening's session. So I have 2 children. My son is 13, my daughter is 9, and they both need me in different ways. And so the 5 love languages has been really helpful for me in particular. So it's a book by Dr. Gary Chapman, and this book describes how every human has within them a love tank, and how that love tank can be full. It can be like running on quarter or running on empty, running half full. And actually that tank can be filled up by certain things. Okay, so here are the 5 love languages. So we've got physical touch, quality time, acts of service, words of affirmation, and gifts. Okay, so looking at that list, there might be one thing that you think, oh yeah, I really need that. Like that's my primary thing. For example, my love language, if we're going to get personal, is quality time. And so, for example, if I get quality time with my partner, with my children, with my friends, with my team, I feel like my love tank is running full. And that's how I keep it topped up, by having quality time with people. So it's interesting even that the job I've chosen to do gives me quality time with a person for 60 minutes. So yeah, quality time is something that fills me up. Now then, when I don't get quality time and I start to run on empty, I can become attention seeking. I can try and manipulate ways in which to try and get love and attention and fill my love tank. And actually that doesn't work very effectively. And this is the same with children. So if they're feeling empty, so to speak, if the parent, caregiver, teacher isn't necessarily speaking the love language that they see as their primary first love language, they might start to present with negative attention-seeking behavior in order to try and get what they need, which doesn't exactly work, does it? That's when we start to punish or shout at them or send them to timeout. And actually it gives them the opposite of what they're looking for. So that's why I think it's really important to try and decipher what your child's love language is, so that you can try and speak their love language every day. Now, when they're young, it's difficult to know what their love language is. And actually, as I was thinking about this, I'm not quite sure I know exactly what my children's love language is right now. And that's why I think it's really important, while they're young, to try and demonstrate all 5 where possible throughout the week, throughout a period of a month, just making sure that you are giving them a sense of physical touch, whether that's holding their hand or stroking the back of the head, when giving them some quality time, which might be just one-on-one with them for just 5 minutes a day, doing something kind for them, like an act of service, like tidying their bedroom, or, you know, obviously we make them food, don't we, but making them something really special because we've decided we're going to do that for them because we love them. Giving them words of affirmation, telling them how, you know, important they are to you and that you love them and that you care about them, and doing that regularly. And also gifts as well. So once we can kind of pinpoint, well, maybe my child really responds well to physical touch, we can give them more of the thing that they are demonstrating. And usually they give to you the thing that they want the most. And that's how you can sort of try to decipher. So it's about playing detective, really, and going, what is it that my child demonstrates to me the most? Like, you know, my daughter said to me over tea, and obviously I'm hyper aware of it today and over the last few days because of this seminar that we're doing tonight. And she said something like, Mum, I just want to tell you that I think you're really great. Or she just said something really kind. And I thought, that's a word of affirmation. And so I responded with the same back, not the exact comment she made, but a comment of, thank you so much for saying that. It's really kind of you to tell me that. So just making sure if they're talking that language, that we are responding as well. So I really enjoy watching how people show me love and noticing that. So for example, I've got this one friend who will always come to my house with a gift. You know, she never comes empty-handed, and I think she's gifts, so I need to make sure that I respond in that way. Gifts is my fifth language, like that's the one that I least talk in, but she talks in that all the time. So I was like, I need to make sure that I go to her house with a gift, because that shows her that I love her. And I've got another friend who she'll always do the practical stuff. You know, she wants to help practically. And I think, gosh, I need to be available to do that for her as well. So it's just deciphering what the people closest to you use as their love language, what they need. They'll often give what they need and giving that back to them, not just talking your own language. So this tale of two sisters I find really interesting. So two sisters, 2 years apart in age. One grew up feeling really loved. The other one grew up feeling not very loved. And mum and dad both had good jobs, but worked a lot. And they would buy the sisters lots and lots of gifts. So one sister grew up feeling utterly loved. So what do you think her love language might have been? Gifts. But the other sister grew up feeling really unloved. And her love language was actually quality time. So she wasn't getting the thing that she needed, but her parents were speaking to her in the language of gifts. So it's really important, I think, that we try and decipher and try and pay attention to the things that our children are doing to us and for us, and reciprocating that. And that's just that initiating the connection. So last night, again, as I said, I've been hyper aware of all of this stuff because of this seminar tonight. And I thought, I've not really spoken to my teenager loads over the last week. I've noticed he's been in his bedroom a lot more than usual. And, you know, that's okay. But I thought I really need to just see how he's doing. So I thought, right, I'm going to make him a hot chocolate with whipped cream and marshmallows. And then I'm going to just go and give it to him and sit with him. So I made one for myself and I said, I've got you a surprise. We sat down together, we drank the hot chocolates, and actually he really opened up to me and we had a really long conversation as we were drinking the hot chocolate. So again, it's that initiating connection where you can. And it's not always, you know, they might say, if I was to say to him, do you want a hot chocolate? He might have said, no, thanks. But because I've just initiated it myself, made it for him, know he likes it, okay, I'll go and do that. That was what got us talking last night. And once we are initiating that connection, I think it's really important that we really try and walk in our children's shoes. Really, really try to be that empathic person where we remember what it felt like to be that age. Remember those insecurities. It's easy enough for us to say, oh, don't be silly, because we've walked through our insecurities already. We've already dealt with and worked through adolescence, but actually they are walking through this. And I remember not feeling very secure at times in my adolescence. So actually it's about trying to initiate that connection by walking in their shoes, showing empathy, demonstrating the love languages where possible. And so my recommended book for this section is The 5 Love Languages of Children. It's by Gary Chapman and it's absolutely brilliant. So if you wanted to get hold of that, then please feel free to do so. I hope that's helpful. Emma, can I pass back to you for our L in child?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lily Jo. Yeah, I think that's, it's so important, isn't it, about kind of connecting. Again, that word is probably my favorite word, but it is so, so important. And actually building on from that, what you've just said about getting alongside and trying to walk in their shoes. You know, empathy isn't about just feeling sorry for our young people when they're going through tough times, but it's actually, really trying to put yourself in their shoe and feel what they're feeling. And it's, sometimes it's not easy when life is so busy. So the L of our acronym CHILD is to listen empathically, or I guess what feels like a buzzword at the moment is this idea of active listening, isn't it? But the way I see this is it's all about being really present and tuning in to our, to what's really going on for our child and for our child or young person. Often that means, particularly during the teenage years and actually throughout, it's having to look beyond the behaviour. Because sometimes I think there's this analogy of the iceberg when it comes to our children, and if you can imagine, you just the iceberg is here, and you just see that top bit, which is the behaviour. So that could be, for example, a teenager coming home from school in a grumpy mood, bit of attitude, slamming doors, throwing bags on the floor, that kind of thing. And it's very tempting as a parent to react to that behaviour. But actually, it's really important that we try and just take a step back and try and look beyond and look at the meaning and what might be going on for that child. So I guess it's what you see versus what's really going on. So for example, that young person who comes in a bad mood, quite possibly has had a really, difficult day, has had, big fallouts with friends, has felt very insecure, has felt ridiculed at school for some reason. Or it could be that they're really anxious about an exam and they've had some bad feedback from a teacher, or, we just don't know, do we? So I think what's really important is to try and, stay regulated ourselves. So kind of tune into where we're at in terms of trying not to react to the behavior, but instead trying to just kind of stay present with it and say something like, gosh, it looks like you've had a really, really tough day. Why don't you go and take some time out? I'm going to make you a drink and a snack, and maybe we'll talk about it later when you're ready to. Instead of jumping in there saying, what's wrong with you? Why are you in such a bad mood? Because you're just not going to get the response that you want from that. So it's really, I suppose it's taking a step back, looking beyond the behavior, looking at what's underneath the surface. And then when they are ready to talk, or like Lily Jo said in her example with her son, really just giving them space and that active listening. If they do come, if your young person comes down and says, can I talk to you? Or they just start talking and you're in the middle of washing up, one of the first things about active listening is turning and paying, giving them your full attention. So, and that demonstrates that you really care, that you're really interested and curious about what they're about to say. Use your body language by having an open stance. Don't fold your arms in a defensive position. Be really aware of your body language. Be really aware of their body language, what they're communicating in that moment. Try, and this is a really difficult one for parents, but try to avoid interrupting. So our tendency is to want to jump in and rescue straight away and come up with the answer and fix the issue immediately. But that's, often the shutters come down, and that young person will, choose to kind of either withdraw again or not come to you in the first place if they know that you're just going to kind of want to put your kind of opinion in there straight away. So really just actively be aware of your kind of stance, be aware of making space for them to say what they want to say, try and not jump in, but then do reflect on what they're saying. Not just parrot it back to them in terms of what they've just said, but do it in a way in a way of, so what I'm hearing is, what you're saying is, and trying to, so you're demonstrating empathy, you're demonstrating a real understanding. And even if you get it wrong, the child will see that that's your intention. You're communicating that intention to just be present and to want to know what's going on for them, and to really listen about what's being said. going back to, the kind of incident with the teenager coming in and slamming the door, if you do get triggered, which you will do because you are human and we are all human, and even me with all my years of doing this for a living, I get triggered by my kids every single day. But I suppose it's what's really important is that we're aware of it. We're aware of it when it happens, and that we do something about it. So if you do feel yourself tensing up and thinking, I'm just going to blow in a minute, one more slammed door or one more look, wrong, then I am just going to lose it, then take some time out. Start to bring in the other things that we've talked about in terms of the self-care, even if that means just taking a quick walk around the block, take some deep breaths, and just recognize that, actually going back to Lily Jo's thing about kind of putting your own oxygen mask on first, if you are not feeling calm and regulated, there is no way you are going to be able to support your young person who is distressed. So it is really, really important that we are aware of what's going on internally for ourselves first. And so once you are calm again, then you can be more available. Then you're able to kind of not be so kind of caught up in the emotion of what's going on. And it just gives you a bit of a kind of a cooling down period. I think something that I talk a lot about is the 3 R's in terms of if a conflict does happen, kind of how to repair that. And the first R is regulate. So what I've just said about kind of, and that means about kind of calming yourself down to then try and be there and present to calm your child down. The second R is the relate. So that's about reconnecting. And that is the example of, going in and taking a cup of tea or a hot chocolate, or it could just be the hug. Anything that allows you to reconnect after words have been said, or after kind of an incident or a conflict has happened. So regulate and then relate. And then the third one, because once you've done those 2, once your child or young person is calm and reconnected to you, they are then in a much, much better position to be able to do the third R, which is about reflect. And it's then that you are able to say, do you know what, let's talk about what happened earlier. This is my take on it. And actually, I recognise that I was really quick to jump in there and give you my opinion. And actually, I'm really sorry about that. So being able to apologise to your child, model being able to own and take responsibility for your actions is really, really important. And then, it gives them space to think, well, actually, Mum, yeah, I know I was wrong too, because I did this and I should have maybe told you what was going on for me earlier. And it just allows you to learn, both of you, and actually and learn and put into practice for the next time it happens, because it will happen and there will be a next time. So yeah, I think the other thing about kind of conflict, and something that I've learned even in my therapy practice, is that when there is a bit of a rupture in the relationship, kind of therapy speak in terms of if there is a bit of a disconnect, actually actively repairing the relationship can actually cause the relationship to be stronger. So don't fear, don't feel like it's a disaster, we've had this argument and I'm a really rubbish mum now and the relationship is really damaged, because actually it can be a real possibility of growth, and it can actually make the connection stronger. So yeah, that's what I would like to say about the L, which is that kind of listening empathically. And I will hand you back over to Lily Jo for the final letter.
Oh, thanks, Emma. I'm really pleased that you mentioned apologising, because I was thinking about that a lot today, and how it's something that my parents never really did for me growing up, because it wasn't something that generation did, but it's something that I do have to do quite often to my children. I have to say, you know what? I'm so sorry for losing my temper. Yeah. I'm feeling really stressed today. And that's my stuff. So owning your own stuff is brilliant. And actually, that I love what you said there about how that actively repairs the relationship. And it does, I know, make the relationship stronger. So I think hard to do, hard to be vulnerable and actually say, do you know what, guys, I've got this wrong, I'm so sorry, but so important to do. So I'm glad you mentioned that tonight. Thank you. So our final letter, D, is all about digging for treasure. And I sometimes feel like a complete nag, like I'm kind of, have you done your homework? No, don't do that. Stop it. Have we got this arrangement sorted? How are you getting to this place? And it just feels like this roller coaster of nagging. And I really find that hard as a parent. And something that helps to interrupt this is what I like to call digging for treasure. So noticing the good, noticing the things that your child is doing that is actually maybe not as obvious or easy to spot, but when you notice it and they recognize you've noticed it, that praise they feel can be real amazing and brilliant at building their self-esteem and in turn building their mental health. So things like you're sitting so beautifully at the table this evening. So just noticing, obviously they're not doing anything in particular, but you can see actually, well, they're not fidgeting. So let's praise that. Especially good with younger children, this. You're using your knife and fork like a pro this evening. It's a good one. Thank you for making a drink, not just for yourself, but for your sister as well. Like just noticing that. Thank you for not complaining when I asked you to load the dishwasher. Is something that I'm having to use a lot at the moment. So using these positive affirmations will really help you dig for hidden gems and help your child to feel praised and affirmed. And that's really important in building their self-esteem and helping them to also do that with others. So I find it really exciting when I hear my children doing that with their friends or doing that with each other, because it's part of the environment that they're in. And that's how we model this for them. So if we can lead on this, if we can dig for treasure in them, they can then dig for treasure in others. And I think that's really exciting, because that then is contagious, isn't it? It's like contagious amounts of praise and affirmation in the community. And that can only be a good thing. And especially for teachers in the classroom, you know, if we can model that behavior of reward and praise, we're going to see that in our children, which is brilliant. Other ways we can do this, practical examples, putting a note in your child's lunchbox, sending them a text message just to say, I love you and I miss you, or that kind of thing. I've not done this one myself. I really do want to do this at some point, but writing a letter and sending it through the post, I think would be really fun. It's so exciting to get post, isn't it? So that kind of thing could be really useful. And one thing that when Emma and I were discussing this workshop, she said that she does sometimes for her children is makes their bedrooms really nice and tidy for them to come home to. And I think that's so lovely. You know, we can be that real nag, tidy your bedroom, pick up your things from the floor, blah, 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 blah. But actually, if you just think, you know what, I've got 15 minutes spare, I'm just going to go and do it anyway. That's a really lovely way of digging for treasure and initiating that connection, and all the things that we've talked about tonight, it all kind of concludes with that. So one book to recommend here for this section is Loving Our Kids on Purpose by Danny Silk. It's a really good one. So if you are looking for books, this one could be key for you. So we are kind of coming to the end of our time together, and I think what's clear and what's been a real strong themes this evening is that, for one, we all have mental health. It's important to prioritize looking after our own mental health in order to look after our children's mental health. That actually love wins, and when we can cultivate a loving environment for our child to thrive at home and at school, we're giving them a massive head start. And obviously, sometimes we will get it wrong. That's okay. We can apologize, we can reset, we can start again, and we can focus in on those things that we can control, because we cannot control our children's behavior. We cannot really control our children's behavior within the classroom. Really, we can control certain aspects of that. And I think we need to be able to appreciate the things we can control and let go of the things that we can't control. So just to remind you, we've got Cultivate Self-Care is our C, H, help and support from others, I, initiate that connection, L, listen empathically, and D, dig for treasure. Brilliant. So that's us complete. And actually, we haven't covered everything. We've covered a very tiny part of looking after and navigating our children's well-being. But actually, having this conversation and starting the conversation, I think, is super key and important. So really would love as many of you to join our support group on Facebook. We really want to build that community. We're going to be doing another one of these sessions in January as well. So we'd love you to come along with a different focus. And if you think, oh, do you know, I really could do with some one-to-one support, Emma does have a few spots available in her appointment book. I have a couple of slots available in mine too. So if you did want to get in touch, you can do that using the email address there. So that's Emma's email. And if someone could just pop mine in there as well, then feel free to get in touch with us, because we'd love to support you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please be sure to subscribe. And if you're feeling generous, why not share with your friends? Please check the description box below for extra links and further information to some of the topics discussed in today's episode. Also, you'll find information about what's coming next. For further information, top tips and advice on all kinds of mental health issues, including low mood, anxiety, self-harm, eating disorders and more, please do check out www.thelilyjoproject.com. You can find my music across all digital platforms, including Spotify and iTunes. See you next time.